Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr. This is episode 206, and it is part 4 of Snake Magic, and I'm still enjoying writing Neidre's story. I hope you're enjoying listening to it. And here we go. Neidre found herself wondering if she would ever get to see another Nazrak in the days and weeks following Kanig's leaving with all of the prince's people. She had no real idea where Kanik even was. The prince probably lived in the capital, Berseda, some days away. She had never been there, but she'd heard tales of the immense numbers of humans and demi-humans, high walls, and immensely wealthy human families that were there. And so her life went on, unable to better herself or change her lot in life. She remained a chattel in the kitchens, and very little changed for anyone else around her. This remained true until one day when magician Caedmon called Neidre to his laboratory. The message came from Thorn, who clearly had been told to come get her, and equally clearly didn't like being made into a messenger boy. "Master Caedmon wants you in his laboratory, now." Neidre started. He hadn't even gotten her attention before barking out his order. "Now? Yes, I will." He smirked at the fear that must have shown on her face, for fear had flooded her. What had she done wrong to deserve this? Thorn had turned and left. Neidre had never been to the sorcerer's lab, but she thought she knew where it was, in the highest part of the estate. She slithered along, a bit slower than necessary, trying to determine what this could be about, and if Thorn had meant anything special with his words or the manner he had said them. One of the human servants was at the base of the stairs when she went up. She could feel him watching her as she undulated up the steps. Humans never seemed to tire of their curiosity about the way she moved. She got to the top of the stairs, 2 flights up, and found there was a hallway with several doors. She did not know exactly which one would be the laboratory. However, there were 2 canids by one of the doors halfway down the passage, and she decided to go to them. The canids were more like Martha than like her. They looked like bipedal dogs, complete with fur, muzzles, and somewhat floppy ears. They had been talking quietly to each other, but stopped as Neidre slid up to them. She didn't know either of their names. They seemed young, and other than that, she couldn't tell a thing. Perhaps they were related, perhaps not. She understood that a fair number of the canids were related on the estate. She wondered what life would be like if she had other Nazrak with her on the estate. True, her species were supposed to kill each other, but she never felt aggression toward anyone, even the few Nazrak she had met. So perhaps that was wrong. "Hello," she said in a near whisper. "Is this Master Caedmon's laboratory?" They said nothing, but gave quick nods. "Were you also asked to come to his laboratory?" More nods. "Okay." She could tell they weren't going to talk with her. She was used to it, especially from the insular canids, but it still rankled her that they wouldn't make even a bit of polite conversation or answer her questions with actual words. In a few minutes, the nearby door opened. It was Garrick, the other apprentice. He looked at the 3 of them and said, "Get in here." He stepped back so that he was out of sight. The canids, with barely a pause, entered. Neidre followed. Garrick was standing by the door, watching them enter. When they had, he shut the door behind them with a metallic click. Master Caedmon was there, writing with a large and expensive-looking quill at a table across the room that, unlike the others, didn't only have laboratory equipment on it, but was also equipped like a desk. It also had several magical orbs and varying levels of light in them. Looking at the fluffy quill dancing over the page, the thought passed through Neidre's head that she was glad she didn't have feathers, which might get plucked for magical uses. Demi-humans of all kinds were thought to have different connections to magic. She supposed that if Master Caedmon had need of some of her scales, she wouldn't be in any position to argue. The 3 of them had naturally stopped just after passing Garrick, not daring to approach without leave. Without looking up, he waved them over to stand in front of his table. They did so, lining up and looking at him silently. He continued to write for a while, then put his quill into its holder and looked up. Neidre had rarely seen Master Caedmon up close like this. From only a few feet away, his skin, which had obvious wrinkles, looked papery, as though it could tear at the lightest touch. He had dark patches as well, both on his face and the back of his hands. His hair was, as he had already known, nearly completely white, and showed the scalp almost everywhere. What she had not known was that he had reddish circles under his eyes that did not look like the result of a lack of sleep. They looked permanent. Something else that didn't strike her from a distance but did now was how thin he was. His cheeks were sunken, almost as though his face was a cave being devoured by the sea. When he spoke, his voice was thin, but had an air about it that spoke of long-held power which had become ingrained. "There will be an announcement tomorrow. My apprentice, Garrick, has been chosen. He will be undertaking a great quest. Some of my drivers and porters are already selected. You three are the last to be chosen to go with him. Consider it an honor." They said nothing, but waited for him to continue. He did so. "Canids, you are to provide him with the empowered orbs he needs to cast magic on the journey. You will be given a supply and an area on one of the wagons comfortable enough to perform your duties while traveling. Nazrach, a wagon has been bought that contains a mobile cookery. You will provide sustenance for the party for the duration of the quest." The three of them nodded their understanding. "Good, you have your assignments. Garrick, take them to Spencer." Why all this formality, Neidre thought, if you were just going to pass us over to one of the overseers? If you weren't even going to try to call us by name? She guessed that Caedmon wanted to impress upon them that they were going to be part of something important. Or possibly someone else had done the choosing, and he wanted to look at them before he sent them on this important mission. Garrick left the room, clearly meaning for the three of them to follow without being told to do so. And they did, Neidre and back, wondering what the coming days, weeks, and who knows but months or years would bring. Garrick led them downstairs and out to the front lawn. There were 5 wagons there, plus 2 carriages, and while Neidre recognized most of them as belonging to Master Caedmon's estate, the sight reminded her irresistibly of the prince's carriage train and of Cannock. Garrick pointed at the Canids. "You'll be in this wagon," he said. It was covered to protect from the worst of the weather. "You, Nazrach, get the food wagon." He pointed. It was another covered wagon with a couple of vents coming out of the canvas. Intrigued, she went round the back. She raised herself up to see in. It was a little hard to see details in the relative gloom. "Don't be shy, Scaly. Get in there." Ignoring the slight, she slid into the wagon. It had a wide stove with a space below to stoke a wood fire. There were a few simple pots and pans, some utensils and rustic serving bowls which are wide and flat enough to serve as plates as well. There are other useful items as well, including storage for food and for water. She hoped that the real food storage would be on another wagon, or they would be having to resupply very often. Something stirred within her, a bit of pride. She would be helping the party, however large it ended up being, by feeding them several times a day, and it was all her responsibility. She didn't know exactly who had chosen her or why, but in any case, she was excited to try her hand at this. She knew she could do it. And that's the end of the episode for this week. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, CryptoBiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. And thanks for listening. Words and music copyright 2021 CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.